In May 1926, inside a modest villa on the Italian coast, local merchants took an extreme step to collect an unpaid grocery bill. They chained and sealed a wooden coffin, refusing to let the body inside be buried until the debts were settled. For 6 centuries, the empire this man represented governed territory stretching across 3 continents. They controlled the vital trade routes between Europe and Asia, collecting duties on the spices, silk, and gold passing through the Bosphorus. The man inside that hostage coffin was Sultan Mehmed VI. By the time he took the throne, the once mighty Ottoman state was hollowed out, leaving him to preside over a shattered, destitute nation. Decades before the First World War or the rise of internal nationalism, a much quieter engine of destruction began to turn, a 60-year cycle of predatory debt from a handful of European banks. Before foreign armies ever marched through the streets of Istanbul, European creditors had engineered a financial occupation that drained the empire of its wealth, leaving the state bankrupt and its final emperor penniless. To understand how a superpower goes broke, you have to rewind to the 1850s. European navies were growing stronger, their factories were mechanized, and the Ottomans knew they were falling behind. Desperate to fund an aggressive modernization campaign and pay for the costly Crimean War, the Sultan's reformers looked to the financial markets of London and Paris for cash. This chart shows the punishing math of the empire's very first foreign loan in 1854. The Ottomans signed a contract legally obliging them to repay 3 million British pounds. But because the bonds were sold at a steep discount, they only received about 2.4 million in actual cash. On top of that built-in deficit, the loan carried a 6% annual interest rate. To keep up with those foreign interest payments, the Ottoman treasury turned to local intermediaries in Istanbul, known as the Galata bankers. The state took out emergency short-term domestic loans at interest rates that frequently topped 20%. They were borrowing expensive money locally just to cover the gap on their massive foreign obligations. Very little of this borrowed capital went toward the railways or telegraph lines that might have generated new revenue. Instead, successive rulers poured vast sums into expanding the imperial navy and constructing sprawling, crystal-studded palaces along the Bosphorus to project an illusion of wealth to their European rivals. Taking out new foreign loans simply to pay the interest on previous loans is a mathematical death spiral. By 1874, the Ottoman Empire had accumulated roughly £200 million in foreign debt, 10 times the government's entire annual income. The breaking point arrived in 1874. A global financial crash dried up credit across Europe, and catastrophic droughts wiped out Ottoman harvests. Unable to collect taxes from starving farmers, the government announced it would reduce its debt payments by 50%. European investors reacted with immediate, calculated fury. The creditor nations refused to accept a loss. Backed by the diplomatic weight of their governments, European bankers forced the Ottomans to the negotiating table. In 1881, they imposed a solution called the Ottoman Public Debt Administration. This administration was a European state operating inside the Ottoman government. It grew into a sprawling bureaucracy of 9,000 officials, making it significantly larger than the Ottoman Finance Ministry itself. This diagram shows the extraction in progress. Every time an Ottoman peasant bought salt, or a merchant sold tobacco, or a fisherman brought his catch to market, foreign agents collected the tax. Those revenues bypassed the Ottoman treasury and were wired straight to shareholder accounts in London and Paris. A foreign entity was now collecting more reliable tax revenue from Ottoman soil than the Sultan. The empire had been stripped of its fiscal sovereignty, proving that you do not need an occupying army to systematically conquer and extract wealth from a nation. By November 1922, the political landscape had collapsed. Following the devastation of the First World War, the Turkish national movement, led by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, officially abolished the 600-year-old sultanate. Sultan Mehmed VI found himself trapped inside his own palace. He faced a choice: remain in the capital and face near-certain execution, or rally his remaining supporters and plunge the nation into a bloody civil war. To spare the country from further bloodshed, the Sultan made a difficult decision. On a freezing, rain-soaked morning, he quietly slipped out a side door of the palace and boarded a British dreadnought, leaving his homeland forever. Before he left, Mehmed had unrestricted access to the state treasury and the imperial crown jewels. Yet he refused to take a single gold coin. He boarded the ship carrying only his personal clothes and a Quran. The man accused of ruining his country walked away empty-handed. Meanwhile, the European bankers who had spent the last 60 years ruthlessly extracting the nation's wealth remained comfortably in their offices, counting the proceeds. His personal tragedy in San Remo was the final symptom of a state that had surrendered its financial independence decades earlier. The blueprint those European banks drew up in Istanbul didn't disappear with the empire. The institutional DNA of the Ottoman Public Debt Administration echoes today in the strict conditions attached to international bailouts and the debt programs imposed on developing nations. The fall of the Ottoman Empire stands as a permanent historical warning. When a capital-poor nation trades its fiscal sovereignty for foreign credit, the total loss of its political freedom is simply a matter of time.